I was stirring honey into my tea when the knock came. 3 sharp raps against the front door. Official, not neighborly. The kind of sound that says someone's here on business, not kindness. When I opened it, there wasn't anyone left on the porch, only a white envelope on the doormat, heavy and stamped with the county seal. Summons by certified delivery. I remember thinking, that's too much formality for an old man who only owes the power company. The kettle whistled behind me, the sound shrill in the quiet kitchen. I poured the water into my cup, sat down at the table, and slit the envelope open with the edge of a butter knife. Inside, neatly stapled papers smelled faintly of ink and starch. I read the first line twice before it made sense. Petition for the appointment of a guardian, on the grounds of cognitive incompetence. Below, in careful print, was my name, Henry Whitmore, respondent, and underneath that my daughter's signature. I stared at those letters for a long time. Sarah Whitmore. Her handwriting had changed since college. Tighter, more controlled. No loops, no softness left. For a moment, I just sat there, the papers trembling slightly in my hands. The steam from my tea curled upward and fogged my glasses. Then I laughed. A short, dry sound. Well, apparently I've lost my mind, I muttered to the empty kitchen. And I didn't even notice. The refrigerator hummed in the corner. On top of it sat a loaf of bread wrapped in its plastic bag, the last few slices already stiff around the edges. On the wall above the table hung the calendar I'd gotten from the insurance office. March 2024. Each square neatly filled with small blue ink notes. Oil change Monday, pharmacy Wednesday, bill due Friday. If that's dementia, then I've been a genius my whole life. The petition listed examples: unpaid bills, all false, unsafe living conditions, ridiculous, and episodes of disorientation, whatever that meant. The final paragraph said the hearing was scheduled for April 11 th, 9:00 a.m. at the county courthouse. Respondent must appear in person or be represented by counsel. Counsel. That word sat in my mouth like dust. I got up slowly, joints stiff from the cold. The floor creaked under my slippers. In the living room, sunlight filtered through the lace curtains Marjorie had loved. She'd picked them out from a catalog in 1998, right before her first surgery. She'd have laughed at this. Cognitive decline, she'd say. You've been misplacing your socks since we got married, Henry. I could almost hear her voice. But there was no one here now, just me, the worn recliner, the smell of dust and lemon polish. On the mantel, beside the clock that hadn't worked since New Year's Eve, stood her framed photograph, Marjorie in her blue sweater, her hand on my shoulder, both of us grinning like fools under a 4th of July banner. Would you look at this, Marge? I said aloud. Your daughter's decided I'm no longer fit to tie my shoes. The house stayed quiet. I poured more tea, out of habit, not thirst, and reread the petition. Each line seemed colder the second time. Incapacity, best interest, guardianship. Pretty words for what they really meant. Take his life, his money, his name, and fold them neatly into someone else's control. I tried to imagine the conversation that led to this. Sarah sitting at her kitchen island, that marble slab I paid for when she bought the house in Dayton. Her husband, what's his name, still Luke? Probably across from her with his tablet open. He's getting older, Sarah. It's the responsible thing. The house, the accounts. You should handle them before it's too late. And Sarah nodding. Before it's too late. I'd seen that look before, the one she gave me when I refused to co-sign their second mortgage. Like she was doing me a favor by robbing me gently. My throat tightened, not from anger, but something heavier, a slow, dull sadness that settled between my ribs. I stood up, walked to the counter, picked up the telephone. The landline, not the cell phone Sarah insisted I should use. I scrolled through the small paper notebook beside it. Names written in my crooked handwriting. Found the one I needed. Margaret. My sister's voice answered after 2 rings. Henry? Everything all right? I stared at the papers on the table. The words cognitive incompetence glared back like they were written in fire. Not exactly, I said quietly. Seems your niece wants the court to decide I've gone senile. There was a pause. Then the clatter of something dropped on her end. She what? I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Filed papers. Official. Signed and sealed. Margaret's voice hardened. Don't you move a muscle, Henry. I'll be there by morning, and I'm bringing Tom with me. The line went dead, and I stood there, phone still in hand, the faint buzz of a dial tone humming like a warning. Outside, the first flakes of late snow began to fall, soft and slow, covering the cracked walkway and the rusted mailbox, the one I'd repaired myself last spring. I folded the petition back into its envelope and placed it on the counter, right beside Marjorie's framed photograph. Well, Marge, I murmured, looks like our little girl's finally found a way to take everything I own. Let's see how far she gets. Then I turned off the kettle, washed the cup, and waited for morning. Margaret and Tom arrived the next day, just before noon. I heard her voice before I saw her, sharp, commanding, impossible to mistake. Henry Whitmore. What in God's name is this nonsense? She came into the kitchen like a storm wearing a red scarf, snow still clinging to her coat. Behind her, Tom followed slowly, brushing off his hat, quiet as always, the calm to her thunder. I slid the envelope across the table without a word. The papers were already creased from where I'd read them a dozen times. Margaret sat down, unfolded them, and started reading aloud. Her voice grew flatter with each paragraph until she stopped midway through and shook her head. She's asking the court to declare you mentally incompetent. So it seems. She wants guardianship? Apparently, yes. Says I forget to pay bills, leave the stove on, confused days of the week. Margaret's eyes narrowed. When was the last time you left the stove on? Never. That's what I thought. Tom took the papers next. He read in silence, methodical as a doctor reviewing a diagnosis. When he finally spoke, his voice was low but certain. This isn't about your mind, Henry, he said, placing the pages down. It's about your money. I poured coffee for all three of us, black, strong, from the old percolator I've had since '92. The same one Marjorie used every Sunday morning. It still makes a sound like a small heart beating when it boils. She's been different since Marge passed, I said, watching the steam curl. Cold. Polite in that way that hurts more than anger. Calls on holidays sometimes. Always asks if I've thought about simplifying things. Simplifying, Margaret repeated bitterly. That means signing everything over before you die. How much are we talking about? $500,000 savings. Give or take. The house might fetch $380 on a good day. Tom whistled softly. Plenty of incentive to find you incompetent. I didn't answer. My eyes were fixed on the photograph above the stove, Marjorie kneeling in the garden, her hands dirty with soil, grinning up at me. That picture had been taken the year Sarah graduated law school. We'd stood side by side at the ceremony, proud as any parents could be. Sarah had cried when she got her diploma. She'd hugged me tight and said, I'll take care of you one day, Dad. I promise. I wonder if this is what she meant. Margaret pushed her cup aside. We'll fight it. Fight what? She's my daughter. She's your daughter, not your owner, she snapped. Tom knows how to handle this sort of garbage. Tom gave a small nod. I practiced probate law for 27 years. I've seen this trick more times than I can count. Adult children trying to declare their parents incompetent so they can control the assets. It's ugly, but it's common. He picked up his pen from his jacket pocket, one of those fine silver ones he always carried. First, we'll need proof that you're perfectly capable. Medical records, cognitive tests, financial statements, everything tidy. That's not a problem. My doctor's files are in the cabinet, and the bills. Paid on time as usual, Margaret interrupted. I know you, Henry. Still, a quiet fear lingered under my ribs. I'd read enough about courtrooms to know reason doesn't always win. Tom must have seen it on my face. He leaned forward. Henry, listen. These cases fall apart when there's no evidence. She'd need a certified diagnosis from 2 physicians to even get a hearing. What she's done so far is just file a petition. A scare tactic. Feels like more than a scare. Then we'll make sure it backfires. Margaret's voice softened for the first time that day. You shouldn't have to deal with this alone. I nodded, but I couldn't look at her. The shame was heavier than the fear. Your own daughter thinking you've lost your mind. There's no easy place to put that thought. She stood and started clearing the cups like she used to when we were kids, moving briskly, tidying as a way to fight the world. Tom opened his briefcase and slid a yellow legal pad across the table. We'll make a list, step by step. The scratching of his pen filled the kitchen. 1. Obtain recent medical certificate, proof of cognitive health. 2. Collect 6 months of paid bills and receipts. 3. Print bank statements showing regular activity. 4. Document daily routine, meals, appointments, correspondences. 5. Record conversations if she contacts you again. I watched the list grow, each line another brick in a wall between me and Sarah. She'll hate me for this, I said quietly. She already does, Margaret replied, not unkindly. Tom looked up. No, she doesn't hate you. Not yet. She just sees you as a ledger, not a person. But once we're done, she'll see you as an opponent, and that's better. I laughed, dry and short. Haven't been an opponent in years. These days, I'm lucky to be a name on the Christmas card list. Margaret sat back down, her eyes still sharp. Then let's remind her whose name it is. We spent the afternoon sorting through drawers and folders. My house has always been neat, but Tom organized it like a courtroom exhibit. Labels, copies, chronological order. He had that steady, patient energy that used to make juries lean forward. By dusk, the table was covered in paperwork. Proof of taxes paid, investments renewed, a clear trail of functioning mind and steady hand. Margaret made dinner: scrambled eggs, fried potatoes, and ham from the deli. She still cooked like Mom. Too much salt, too much butter, and exactly what I needed. As we ate, she said, "What's your plan if this goes to court?" I chewed slowly, staring at my plate. I suppose I'll tell the truth. Tom shook his head. Truth doesn't win cases. Proof does. But don't worry, we'll have both. After they left, the house felt strangely large again. I sat alone at the table, the lamp casting a small pool of light over the scattered documents. Outside, the snow had stopped. The world looked almost peaceful under its white blanket. I took the petition from where it lay folded beside the salt shaker and held it up to the light. Incompetent. The word no longer scared me. It just made me tired. I placed it back in the envelope, wrote today's date in my notebook, March 3rd, 2024. Margaret and Tom came. We have a plan, and closed the book with a firm hand. Somewhere deep inside, something that had been asleep for years began to stir. Not anger, not yet, something older. A sense of fight. Marjorie used to call it my switch. When Henry flips that switch, she'd say, the world better get out of the way. That night, I left the lamp on until the early hours. The house was warm. The papers were in order. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel helpless. The following Monday, I woke before dawn, the way I used to when I still worked at the plant. Habit never really leaves you, even after 30 years of retirement. I boiled water for coffee, toasted bread, and opened the notebook Tom had given me. A single page at the top read, Objective Proof Competence. Below, Tom had written 3 words in his blocky handwriting. Be methodical. Be quiet. Be patient. I could manage that. The house was still and cold. The radiator clicked softly. The kitchen clock ticked out its stubborn rhythm. Outside, the street lamps were fading as the first gray light touched the snowbanks along the road. I began with the simplest thing, order. I lined up my bills on the table: electric, gas, property tax, all paid through online banking. I checked the timestamps, printed the receipts. Then I set up the webcam Tom lent me, one of those small black ones that clips to your monitor. He said, "We'll record you reading the morning paper, doing crosswords, paying bills. It's dull, but dull can save your life in court." He was right. I spoke clearly, dated everything aloud, and smiled at the camera when I was done. It made me feel foolish, like a man auditioning for sanity. But when I watched the recording back, I look fine. Older, yes. Tired, but steady. Later that day, the phone rang. "Hi, Dad." Sarah's voice, smooth, professional, with that subtle edge of false concern. "Just checking in. How are you feeling?" "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said. "Just making breakfast." "Breakfast? It's almost noon." I smiled. "Not for retired people. Our clocks run different." She gave a small laugh, but it didn't sound genuine. "I just wanted to make sure you're doing okay. I've been really worried about you since Mom passed. It's been, 2 years?" "3, Sarah." "Right," she said quickly. 3. Time flies, doesn't it? I could hear keyboard clicks in the background. She was typing notes. For her lawyer, probably. Anyway, she continued, "I've been thinking. Maybe I should help you organize your finances. Just temporarily, until you get everything in order." "I appreciate that," I said evenly. "But I've already organized them. Every penny accounted for." She hesitated. "Dad, you don't have to be defensive. I'm only trying to help before things get, before they get harder for you." "Harder?" I asked. "You mean before I run out of money or before you run out of patience?" Silence. "Then that's not fair." "No, Sarah," I said softly. "What's not fair is calling your father incompetent while he's still paying the taxes on your first house." She hung up without another word. I sat there for a while, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the steady drip of the kitchen faucet. It's strange how quiet sounds louder after a fight. By the end of the week, Tom had arranged an appointment for a cognitive evaluation at St. Mary's Clinic. The doctor was young, 30, maybe 32, with a stethoscope that looked too new for real medicine. He smiled politely and handed me a pencil and a sheet of paper. "We'll just run through a few short tests, Mr. Whitmore," he said. "Nothing to worry about." He asked me to subtract 7s from 100, draw a clock face, name the current president, and recall 3 words after 5 minutes. I did them all easily. When we finished, he looked at me over his glasses. "If you don't mind my saying, you seem perfectly capable. Why the assessment?" I told him the truth. His eyebrows rose. "Your daughter filed for guardianship?" "She did." "Well," he said, signing the last page, "she's going to be disappointed. I'll have the report sent to your attorney within 48 hours. He handed me the carbon copy. I slipped it into my coat pocket and thanked him. Outside, the air smelled like snow and exhaust. I stood in the parking lot for a while, watching cars move along the main road, mothers with kids, workers with lunchboxes, young men with phones glued to their hands. Life going on perfectly ordinary. I thought of Sarah's voice on the phone, cold and deliberate, and for the first time I realized something simple and final. She didn't see me as a person anymore. I'd become an obstacle. That weekend, Margaret came by with groceries. "You're eating," she demanded, setting a brown paper bag on the counter. "Every day." She glanced around the kitchen, tidy, well lit, with soup simmering on the stove. "Good. Tom says the doctor's report was perfect." I nodded. "Still, she's going to push harder." "Let her. Tom's seen worse. We'll keep everything documented." I opened the fridge. She called again Thursday. Margaret's expression darkened. And same performance. Concern, pity, small talk. Then a suggestion that I should delegate responsibilities. "That's code for sign over the accounts," Margaret said flatly. I smiled. I didn't. She grinned. "Now that's the brother I remember." We ate together, soup, bread, and her chocolate pie. She talked about her garden, her grandchildren, the new heater that cost more than it should have. For a few hours, the house felt alive again. I even laughed once or twice. When she left, I walked her to her car. The sky was turning pink over the roofs, the kind of winter dusk that always made Marjorie stop and stare. Margaret hugged me tight. "We'll get through this," she said. "And when we do, you make sure she never gets another cent." "I already have an idea about that," I told her. A few days later, Sarah appeared unannounced. I heard her car door slam and the brisk, high-heeled steps on my porch. "Dad," she called, pushing the door open before I could answer. "You really should keep this locked." I was at the table sorting receipts. "Hello, Sarah." She looked around, scanning the kitchen like a realtor on inspection. "You've been busy," she said. "Everything looks cleaner than I expected." "I manage." "Dad, you don't have to prove anything to me." "Funny," I said. "I thought I had to prove everything to the court." She froze for half a second. "Not long, but long enough." "Who told you that?" "I read your petition. I may be old, but I can still read." Her jaw tightened. "It's not what you think. You've been forgetting things, small things. I'm just trying to protect you before something serious happens." I smiled slightly. "Like forgetting to pay for your second mortgage?" The color drained from her face. "That's not fair. Neither is trying to take what isn't yours." She crossed her arms. "You've always been dramatic, and you've always mistaken cruelty for strength," I said quietly. For a moment, we just stood there, father and daughter, a lifetime between us. Laughter, birthdays, graduations, now buried under the cold arithmetic of inheritance. She broke the silence first. "You'll thank me one day." "I doubt it." When she left, the echo of her heels on the porch sounded like gunshots. I waited until her car disappeared down the street before I went to my desk. I opened the drawer, took out my notepad, and wrote down every word of our conversation, including the time. March 17th for 40 p.m. Tom will be proud. That night, as I sat in my recliner with the television flickering soundlessly in front of me, I felt something different rising inside. Not fear this time, strategy. Sarah thought she was setting the rules of the game. She'd forgotten who taught her to play in the first place. When she was 10, we used to play chess on Sunday afternoons. She'd get frustrated whenever she lost. I always told her the same thing. The best move is the one they don't see coming. I turned off the TV, leaned forward, and smiled at the reflection of my own face in the dark screen. "Your move, Sarah," I whispered. April 11th. The date had been circled in red on my calendar for weeks. I woke up before the alarm, though I'd hardly slept. The morning light was cold and pale, the kind that makes everything look sharper, harder. I shaved carefully, using the old safety razor Marjorie bought me on our 10th anniversary. Still worked fine, just needed a steady hand. My reflection in the mirror looked older, sure, but not frail. There was fight left in the eyes. I put on my best gray suit, the one that smelled faintly of cedar from the closet, and polished my shoes until I could see the kitchen ceiling in them. The courthouse might as well have been a battlefield. I wanted to arrive looking like a man worth taking seriously. Tom and Margaret picked me up at 8:30. She brought a thermos of coffee, strong enough to wake the dead, and a tin of mints in case your mouth gets dry when you speak. Tom drove, silent and focused. He had the expression of a surgeon before an operation. "Don't say too much unless the judge asks," he told me. "Let me do the talking. We've got everything we need." "I trust you," I said, though my stomach had other opinions. The courthouse loomed ahead, a slab of gray stone against a gray sky. Inside, the air smelled of floor wax and burnt coffee. Every sound echoed. Heels on tile, paper shuffling. The low murmur of lawyers rehearsing arguments. Sarah was already there, standing by the benches with her husband, Luke. She wore a navy suit and that smile she uses in photographs. Polite, distant, performative. Luke looked uncomfortable, like a man who'd worn someone else's conscience by mistake. When she saw me, her expression flickered for a moment. Surprise, maybe irritation that I looked far too composed. Then the mask slid back into place. "Dad," she said, approaching. "You made it." "Of course," I replied. "I might be old, but I still know how to follow directions." Her smile tightened. "I'm glad you're here. This isn't meant to be hostile, you know. I just want to make sure you're protected." "From what?" She hesitated, searching for the right line. "From yourself." Before I could answer, Tom stepped between us, professional as ever. "Ms. Whitmore, let's save the dramatics for the hearing." The bailiff called us in. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights, a faint hum from a ceiling vent. The judge sat high above at her bench, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes that had probably seen too many families tear each other apart. Case number 14 to 276, Whitmore versus Whitmore, the clerk announced. The irony of hearing my own name on both sides wasn't lost on me. Sarah's attorney, a young man in an expensive suit, began his statement. "Your Honor, my client seeks guardianship of her father, Mr. Henry Whitmore, on the grounds that he is no longer capable of managing his affairs responsibly. She acts purely out of concern and familial duty." He handed over a folder thick with printouts and photos. The judge flipped through them silently. "Ms. Whitmore," she said, "you may speak." Sarah stood, voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "Your Honor, my father has become increasingly forgetful. He's left bills unpaid, confused dates, even once called me by my late mother's name. I've tried to help, but he refuses assistance. I'm worried about his safety." She looked at me as she said it, eyes glossy, mouth trembling slightly. I'd seen her use that same performance in high school drama club. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Whitmore, do you wish to respond?" Tom rose before I could. "Your Honor, if I may." She nodded. "Mr. Whitmore is 74 years old. He is not infirm, nor is he incompetent. We have submitted medical documentation confirming full cognitive function, signed by Dr. Raymond Patel of St. Mary's Clinic. Furthermore, Exhibit B contains 6 months of organized, punctual bill payments and bank statements. Exhibit C includes video evidence of Mr. Whitmore managing his finances, reading current news, and performing daily tasks without assistance." He paused, letting the silence breathe. "As for the alleged forgetfulness, Your Honor, I submit that calling one's daughter by her mother's name is not a sign of dementia, but of memory, a human one." A faint smile tugged at the corner of the judge's mouth. Tom continued, pacing slowly. "Ms. Whitmore also provided photos of a dirty dish, a burned-out light bulb, an unopened envelope on a counter, as supposed proof of incapacity. If untidiness were grounds for guardianship, half the county would be declared incompetent." A chuckle rippled through the courtroom. Even the bailiff coughed into his fist. Sarah's attorney shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, with respect, this is not a joke." "No, Counselor," the judge said. "It's a tragedy." "Continue, Mr. Collins." Tom bowed his head slightly. "Your Honor, what we have here is not concern, it's control. A daughter seeking power over her father's assets under the guise of care. There's no medical evidence, no documented harm, no pattern of neglect, only ambition." The judge looked down at the papers again. Her pen tapped twice against the desk. "Ms. Whitmore," she said finally, "do you have certified medical evidence of your father's cognitive decline?" Sarah hesitated. "We were in the process of... So no, I've spoken with his doctor." "Do you have written statements, affidavits, or evaluations?" Sarah's voice dropped. "No, Your Honor." The judge sighed. "Then I see no legal basis to proceed. This petition is premature at best, exploitative at worst. Case dismissed." The gavel struck wood. A single clean sound. The room emptied quickly, as if everyone wanted to leave before the air got heavier. Sarah stood frozen by the table, her face pale, mouth slightly open. Luke whispered something, but she didn't move. Tom was already gathering our papers. He didn't gloat, didn't smile, just nodded once to the judge and led me out. Margaret followed behind, clutching her purse like a medal. Outside, the spring air felt warmer than it should have. The sun had broken through the clouds. Tom adjusted his hat and said, "That's the end of it, Henry. She can't refile without new evidence. I imagine she'll try anyway." "She can try," he said, eyes glinting, "but she'll fail." Margaret slipped her arm through mine. "You handled yourself perfectly." I was ready to throw my shoe at her halfway through, but you stayed calm. "Calm," I said softly, "is the one thing she doesn't expect from me." We walked to the car, and as we pulled away, I glanced back through the window. Sarah was standing on the courthouse steps, watching us leave. She looked small, not pitiful, just hollow, like someone who had bet everything and lost. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Not victory, not joy, just the quiet relief of surviving your own family. Tom dropped me home around noon. He gave my shoulder a firm squeeze. "You're free, Henry. Keep it that way." After they left, I stood in my living room, sunlight cutting across the floorboards. I poured myself a glass of water and raised it toward Marjorie's picture on the mantel. "Well, Marge," I said, "looks like our daughter lost her case." And for the first time in a long while, I laughed, not bitterly, not out of spite, but with something lighter. Something like the sound of freedom. 2 days after the hearing, I woke to the sound of gravel crunching under tires. When I looked through the curtain, I saw Sarah's silver Lexus parked crooked across my driveway. She never learned how to park straight. Marjorie used to laugh about it. The car door slammed, and there she was, storming up the walkway in a tailored black coat, her heels stabbing the concrete like punctuation marks. I didn't move. I let her ring the doorbell 3 times before I opened it. "Morning, Sarah." "Don't you morning me," she snapped, brushing past me into the living room. "You made a fool out of me in court." "Did I?" I closed the door behind her. "I thought the judge did that." She spun on me, eyes blazing. "You think this is funny? You had your little performance with that sleazy lawyer and your meddling sister." "Brother-in-law," I corrected gently. "He was quite effective, wasn't he?" She ignored the jab. "You've ruined my reputation." The judge practically accused me of being a con artist in front of everyone. I walked to the kitchen and poured 2 cups of coffee, deliberately slow. The mug in front of her read "World's Best Dad," a gag gift from her 10th birthday. She didn't seem to notice. "Sugar?" I asked. "Stop playing games, Dad." Her voice cracked on the word Dad. I set the mug in front of her and sat opposite. "You filed a petition to declare me incompetent, Sarah. Games are your department." She rubbed her temple. "You're being paranoid. I was trying to protect you. You live alone, you're getting older." "Older, yes. Stupid, no." She flinched at that, the mask slipping for just a second before she forced a tight smile. "You don't understand. Luke and I are under enormous pressure. The mortgage, the tuition, the life he chose," I interrupted. Her eyes went cold. "You have no idea what it's like trying to keep everything afloat. You had Mom. You had stability. I also had 2 jobs, and no one paid my debts," I said evenly. "Every brick in this house, every dollar in my account. I earned it. And now you're hoarding it like a dragon," she spat. "What's the point of sitting on money you'll never use?" "That's not the question," I said. "The question is why my daughter thinks she's entitled to it." For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the clock above the refrigerator. Then she stood, pacing, voice rising. "I can't believe you'd rather give everything to that nosy woman and her husband than your own blood." "Margaret," I said, "she didn't try to have me institutionalized." Sarah's mouth opened, then closed again. I could see the panic flicker in her eyes, that dawning realization that maybe, just maybe, she'd gone too far. "Dad," she said finally, softer now, sitting back down. I made a mistake. I overreacted. I didn't mean to hurt you." Her voice trembled. She was good at that. I remembered when she was 16 and crashed the family car, standing in the driveway with tears in her eyes saying, "Please don't be mad, Daddy." She knew how to perform regret. But this time I'd rehearsed too. I slid a thick envelope across the table. "I thought you might come by," I said. "Here, you should read this." She frowned, opening it. Inside were several neatly printed pages, stamped and notarized. "What is this?" "My new will," I said. Her eyes darted over the text, confusion tightening into disbelief. "This leaves everything to Aunt Margaret and her family." "That's right." And me?" "You," I said calmly, "get $1. Her face froze. $1? "A symbolic inheritance," I explained. "Tom suggested it. It prevents legal challenges. You're included, just not enriched." For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then she slammed the papers onto the table, so hard the coffee spilled. "You're cutting your own daughter out of your life over one misunderstanding?" I looked at her, really looked. The tight jaw, the expensive coat, the diamond ring glinting under the kitchen light. All the things she thought defined her. "No," I said. "I'm cutting out the person who looked at her father and saw a bank account with legs." "That's not fair," she shouted. "Neither is betrayal," I said softly. She stood there, breathing hard, face flushed. For a moment I thought she might cry. Instead, she gathered her purse and coat. "You'll regret this," she said. "When you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you, don't expect me to come running." I smiled faintly. "You already taught me not to." She froze at the doorway, waiting for me to take it back, to apologize, to soften. I didn't. Her heels clicked across the linoleum, down the porch steps. And then there was only the sound of her car door slamming and the engine starting. I stood at the window, watching as she backed out too fast, nearly clipping the mailbox. The same mailbox she used to decorate with stickers when she was 8. Then she was gone. That night I called Margaret. She answered on the first ring. "Well," she said. "She came," I replied. "And she took it about as well as a cat in a bathtub." Margaret laughed, a loud, unapologetic sound that filled my empty kitchen. "Served her right. Did you tell her about the $1? "Oh," she noticed. "Good," she said. "Maybe she'll finally learn the value of it." I leaned back in my chair, the phone warm against my ear. "It's funny," I said. "I thought I'd feel worse. I thought it would hurt to close that door." "And does it?" "No," I said. "It feels like closing a wound." We said goodnight, and after I hung up, I walked to the mantel. The house was dark except for the small lamp by Marjorie's photo. I touched the frame gently. "You were right, Marge," I whispered. "We gave her too much too soon." Outside, rain had started, soft, steady, washing the day clean. I made another cup of coffee, sat by the window, and watched the streetlights shimmer in the puddles. For years, I'd thought silence was loneliness, that a quiet house meant a hollow life. But as I sat there, the hum of the fridge and the patter of rain the only sounds, I realized something else entirely. The house wasn't empty anymore. It was finally mine again. And when I turned out the light and headed for bed, I whispered the truth to the dark. For the first time in years, I don't owe anyone a thing. The next morning dawned gray and slow, with the kind of calm that follows a storm, the air clean, the ground slick with leftover rain. The house was silent, except for the faint buzz of the old refrigerator and the steady ticking of the wall clock. The same clock Marjorie wound every Sunday for 30 years. I moved through the rooms without hurry, collecting empty cups, straightening a chair, folding a stray blanket. Everything was in its place, the way I liked it. The smell of coffee still lingered from the night before. For the first time in months, there was no dread waiting at the door. No unopened envelopes, no uneasy phone calls, no voice rehearsing concern while calculating numbers in the background. The world outside could turn however it wanted. I had my peace. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the notebook again. The one with Tom's first note at the top. Be methodical. Be quiet. Be patient. I turned to the last page and wrote, April 15th. Sarah came. She shouted. She left. The matter's closed. I am fine. I am free. The words looked small but solid, like the last nails in a door I'd finally shut. I closed the notebook and poured myself another cup of coffee. Outside, a bird landed on the telephone wire, shaking off the water from its wings. I watched it for a long while, the way you watch something ordinary until it feels extraordinary. Later that day, Tom stopped by. No paperwork this time, no folders, no legal pad. Just him, in a brown coat that had seen too many winters. Brought you some cornbread, he said, setting a foil-wrapped parcel on the counter. Margaret made too much, as usual. I smiled. Tell her I said thank you. She knows, he said, pouring himself coffee. So, how are you holding up? Better than I expected, I admitted. The quiet's different now. Doesn't feel heavy anymore. He nodded. Pieces weigh too. Just a better kind. We sat together for a while, not saying much. He told me about his garden, how the tomato plants had survived the frost, how Margaret was already planning to visit her grandchildren for Easter. Normal things, the kind of conversation that feels like a steady heartbeat after months of irregular ones. When he got up to leave, he paused at the door. You did the right thing, Henry. You know that, right? I know, I said. Still wish it hadn't come to this. It always comes to this, he said softly. Families are like glass, strong until someone decides to test the surface. He patted my shoulder and left. I stood at the window again, watching his car disappear down the street. The rain had stopped, leaving the world gleaming and clean. That evening, I went through the old chest in the hall closet. Marjorie's photos, Sarah's drawings, the box of keepsakes I hadn't opened since the funeral. Inside, I found a folded sheet of paper in Sarah's childhood handwriting. It was a school assignment, when I grow up. The crayon letters were crooked and bright. When I grow up, I want to be like my dad, because he fixes things. I sat on the floor for a while, holding that paper. There was something almost cruel in its innocence. Somewhere between those lines and this life, we had lost each other. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired of mourning people who were still alive. I put the paper back in the box, careful not to fold it further, and closed the lid. In the living room, I turned on the radio. The old kind, wooden frame, round dial, soft static between songs. It hummed to life with a jazz station from Cleveland. Ella Fitzgerald's voice poured through the speakers, gentle and distant. I poured myself a small glass of bourbon, the one I'd been saving for a good night. This was as good as any. To closure, I said quietly, raising it toward the empty room. The bourbon burned a little going down, but it was a clean burn, the kind that leaves warmth instead of ache. Later, as I locked up for the night, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Old man, white hair, soft lines, steady eyes. Not broken, not fading. Still here. On the mantel, Marjorie's photograph smiled in the lamplight. For a heartbeat, it felt like she might wink. I smiled back anyway. Looks like I fixed it, Marge, I whispered. Just took me long enough. I turned off the light and stood in the dark, listening. The house was alive, creaking, breathing, remembering. And for the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like something earned. It felt like peace. I walked to the window, opened it a crack, and let the night air in, cool, steady, filled with the sound of the wind moving through the trees. Then I closed my notebook one last time and said the words aloud, as if to seal them. For the first time in years, I'm not waiting for anyone to do right by me. The clock ticked on, calm and relentless. This time, I said, smiling faintly, I did right by myself.